We are back today with the Madden rebuild here on Madden 24, the simulation rebuild with head coach Jason Ferguson. We're coming off a year where the Niners in our first season went 9-8, and to be honest, in this offseason, I thought we made a couple of really key moves. I thought one of those moves was signing wide receiver 2 Kerry Brennan, who in his career so far has really shown up to play and has been a good number 2, number 3 through his first 4 years, and he's coming off his best one last year. So we brought him in to replace Josh Hatchett, who we traded away. We still got Deebo Samuel and Brock Purdy and McCaffrey. We drafted Devin Russell to be the new starting tight end over Desmond Fairley. And the offensive line is mostly the same as it was last year. Most guys have returned. So the offense is pretty similar to what it was last year, and the offense wasn't bad last year. It was the defense that was pretty bad, and part of that was the passing game. So one of the biggest moves we made was drafting corner Julian Kilroy, who was going to start as our third corner. And then we also drafted James Allen as a really hot ticket third or a second round pick as a hidden depth player. He'll start as well. We got Gordon Harrison starting this season as a 71 superstar free safety. We got Delvin Matthews coming into his second year. Same with Ezekiel Chambers on the defensive line. And then obviously DeAndre Middleton on the other side of him. So the defense should be on track to have a better year. We'll see what happens. But I am kind of expecting a playoff caliber performance this year because of the record last year plus the additions this year. We start off playing the Rams and we lose on opening day 16-10. Despite outgaining the Rams, putting up a good amount of yards, we only put up 10 points. And Purdy wasn't very good in this game. 15 for 26, 1 touchdown, no picks. McCaffrey 4.4. Ingram had a decent day. But Jameson Williams had by far the most receiving yards. Our highest guy was Ike with 46. Only one grab here for Darby as our third tight end, but it was for a touchdown. We got a sack here for Chambers on opening day. And a split set between Greenlaw and somebody else. But no recoveries for us in terms of fumbles. And Pat Phillips missed a field goal. And of course, we lose a major defensive piece, Talanoa Hufanga, to a major injury. He's going to be out for the next 9 weeks, including some extra weeks due to IR. We're going to bring in Taylor Rapp to replace him. But that is a key loss for this defense. Going to need Kilroy and other guys to really step up here over these next couple of weeks. But in week 2, we lose again. Once again, we outgain our opponent, but we don't put enough points on the board to win. And Brock Purdy played well. 2 touchdowns, no picks, and nearly 300 yards. May played well too, but Nick Henson grabs 2 touchdowns. 5.0 for McCaffrey, but no scores for him. Jermichael Howard, one of the top receivers in this league now, led the game in receiving yards. Ayuk caught 2 touchdowns, and on defense, we only got 1 sack. It was for Greenlaw, and he's not usually got to get sacks. He's a pass coverage linebacker mostly, so we need these pass rushers, Chambers, Allen, Middleton, other guys to step up really and do a better job here, because if they can't, then it's going to be tough for this defense to get stops. And we start the season 0-3. We lose here against Jacksonville, our first game where we don't outgain the opponent, and we lose by another single scoreline. 2 touchdowns for Lawrence, but Purdy had a rating of below 100. 3.4 on the ground for McCaffrey, just not much there. Looks like Jamal Bailey had a big day against us with 133 and a touchdown. Ayuk caught 1, so did Devin Russell. But once again, you're just not seeing any big playmakers on this offense so far. There hasn't been a big game by anybody in terms of the skill positions, and on defense, we're still not seeing enough plays being made by the playmakers that you usually expected from, like Fred Warner, or the guys that you brought in who are coming into their second or third years, like Gordon Harrison, Ezekiel Chambers, Middleton. They're not making the right plays, and that's why we're 0-3 to start off this next season. Remember that last year we had 9 wins. We were above 500. We barely missed the playoffs by a single game thanks to a Week 18 loss. So Going into week 4, we're playing the 1-2 Seahawks, and this right here is our best chance to get a win in these first 4 weeks because their offense does not move the ball very well, and their defense does not prevent guys from scoring, but they put up over 500 yards of offense. We put up less than half of that. Our worst defensive performance to boot, and despite Purdy with a good rating, he had hardly any passing yards and was 11 for 22. It's hard to win when you are completing only 11 total passes and when you can't get anything going on the ground anymore. All of a sudden, McCaffrey can't get anything going. And JSN just tore us up, 132 scores. The secondary is still giving up 100-yard receivers game after game now. And in this game, we only had 1 sack split between Chambers and Delvin Matthews. We allowed 2. And we got 2 picks for Fred Warner, but we still allowed 28 points and allowed over 500 yards. He does get Player of the Week because he also forced 2 fumbles, but we recovered neither of them. And so now we're 0-4. Brock Purdy says we got to really step things up here, and we don't going into a game against Philly, our 3rd time in these first 5 weeks outgaining our opponents, but also our 3rd time out of these 5 weeks not outscoring our opponents while doing that. Another good day for the opposing quarterback when Purdy has a poor rating, below 4.0 on the ground for McCaffrey for the 3rd straight game. Ayuk finally gets over 100 yards for his best game so far, but we once again allowed another 100-yard receiver, and this defense is not doing anything, not forcing turnovers whatsoever. It's been Fred Warner only forcing them, and we can't get any pass rush, and we're not stopping these receivers in the secondary. And now Kerry Brennan coming out of this game is upset about his production. So if we can't win getting +5 catching and +5 catching traffic, when can you win? We lose our next 2 games against 2 more NFC opponents, dropping both in 1-score games. And in both games, we allowed 20 points, but could not muster as much. 14-20, Washington comes back in the second half to win. Pretty poor day for Purdy, 134 through the air, and despite us picking off Stephen Pagel twice, we still lost the game. McCaffrey now 3.2 on the ground, despite us doing a good job against their ground game. And in terms of the pass rush, we finally got some sacks from Allen and Middleton, only 1 for each, and we got a pick for Fred Warner and the first for Julian Kilroy. But then we lost again against the Giants, and all of a sudden, I'm just thinking, is this year already lost? Like, we haven't had this bad of a year so far in the series. This is by far the worst start to any year so far. And as of right now, I'm not seeing any indication that we're going to get better. Like, even though these last 2 games, we had a close score. We've had close scores all year long and haven't come out on top. And the offense is getting worse as the year goes on. So now, coming into week 8, we are 0-7. Winless, and we're facing the 4-2 Colts, who are a top 5 offense, a top 10 defense. But we've got Reds across the board here. We're 2 games back from the Cardinals, who are 2-4. The Rams and Seahawks are over 500. And, I mean, dude, look at this. The defense has just completely collapsed. The run defense, which was good for the first 2 years, is just gone now. Completely gone. It's worse than it was in our first year. And the offensive ranks in terms of yards are low. We got 3 touchdowns on the ground, which is the lowest across the entire league. And we're not forcing takeaways on defense. We can't convert on 3rd down or stop teams when they enter the red zone. And this is just going so south so fast. I did not expect this at all. Through 7 games, Brock Purdy simply has been so much worse than last year. In fact, he's pretty much regressed back to what he was before we took over. Now, don't forget that Kyle Shanahan was fired after these last 2 years in 2026 and 2027 for Purdy when he threw 11 picks in each year and had a rating below 95. And he's on track for a similar year this year. And on the ground, McCaffrey is not doing too well either. He's just below 4.0, but he's pretty much living off those first couple of weeks because each week since the first 2 or 3 has been less than 4.0 per carry. So he's regressing. Purdy's regressing. Ayuk is still having a strong year, Just not as strong as last year. But Deebo Samuel's doing nothing for us right now. Kerry Brandon's not doing horribly, so I'm not sure why he was really complaining about his production. But the offensive line, I think, allowing 5 sacks through 7 weeks for a left guard is questionable for Derek Quinn. So that's a new concern that has arisen after he had a pretty solid year last year. And we've got no good pass rusher. Nobody on this team has made their name known. Everybody has a sack and a half or less. Just mustering nothing on this defensive line. We only have 4 takeaways forced, and 3 of them were from one player. We have no recovered fumbles despite forcing 2 fumbles. And Pat Phillips might just be your best player. 8 for 9 on field goals, perfect on PATs. He and Fred Warner might be just our 2 best guys on the roster right now, based off stats alone. So talking about Deebo Samuel, I do want to trade him now because he's old. He's 33 years old, big cap hit. And this year is definitely just a wash at this point. So I saw this offer from New York, and I took it for Clay Henson because they are essentially making Deebo their new number 1 because they have a really bad receiving core. So this makes sense for both teams. We acquire a 4th round pick. That's going to be big for us because we're probably about to enter a true rebuild given how this year has gone. We're going to make Henson the number 3 over Kendrick Blackstock. But in terms of cap space, we got to talk about Brock Purdy. He's got 2 years left, including this year. So 1 year left essentially after this year. And he is a massive cap hit, well over $55 million. Do we try to trade him in the offseason? We can't really do it right now because no teams can afford the contract. But in the offseason, there will be some teams that might be able to. Mock Draft 2, they have us taking Delvin McDaniels first overall, but we have Fred Warner. I'm not taking middle linebacker, so this guy's not going first overall if we end up having the first overall pick, which we currently are on track for, obviously. So talking about the draft, then let's talk about some prospects and go over a couple of guys. These are the top 5 quarterbacks. There are only 5 that are supposed to go before day 3. And the top guy here is Warren Long, who's more of a pocket passer, but can move outside of the pocket if he needs to. So he's not a guy that's going to, put the wheels on or anything, but he's got good accuracies, decent throwing the run, decent under pressure. We'll see if he's any good. But to be honest, my favorite quarterback on this list is this guy right here, Spencer Faulkner. A scrambler with only solid speed, but good to great throw power. And good accuracies, really good under pressure and throwing the run, which caught my eye a lot because he might have better accuracies overall than the previous quarterback did. They got TJ Blackburn here, who's a strong arm guy who does most of his damage inside the pocket. Great to elite throw power, which is to be expected given his archetype. A break sack, B under pressure, C throw on the run. Accuracies are probably going to be pretty decent, but the medium might be bad. And then Corey Bridge here, probably a late round quarterback, might go early seconds. Also a scrambler, kind of like Faulkner is. And he's a fantastic athlete. So if you want somebody that is going to run the ball like Lamar Jackson does, you go for this guy, Corey Bridge. So could be a solid option later in the round. And then Clyde Walden is the round 2 to 3 projection here, but I wasn't a fan of his accuracies despite the good throw power. He's got D short accuracy and very questionable awareness too. So right now, Faulkner is my top guy. I also looked at the receivers in this draft too because we traded away Deebo Samuel. We now kind of have an open spot at number 3 if we want to draft somebody there. Maybe they could be the number 2 over Brennan if he doesn't end up playing all too well this year. We got Corey Denard here, who is supposed to be the first receiver off the board, but he's got a really bad deep route with C release, decent spec catch. Greg Weeks here is a 5'9 receiver, so he's not going to be going up for any big catches, but he's got a deep route, so very different than Denard was. And he's got some solid speed with C spec catch, C catch in traffic, but D catching. How can you draft a guy with that? Levi Bush here might just be the best option out of the guys that we've seen so far, with great to elite speed, good to great jumping, a good overall athlete, but C catching is also still very questionable. But A spec catch, B catch in traffic, who knows? Deshaun Terry is another very similar archetype as to Greg Weeks, but he is a lot faster with great to elite speed when Weeks did not have nearly as fast a speed. And he's got D catching too, but with A deep route, A spec catch, B catch in traffic, A to C release, that could be worth the pick. But all of these guys have horrible catching, man. Look at this guy, Terry Manning. Also great to elite speed, also a deep threat, but D catching. What is it with these guys? I don't get it. Also B spec catch, B catch in traffic. I'm sorry to not put as much stock into those attributes because every receiver seems to have those at a B or higher. So right now I think Bush might be the best option just based off the catching not being as low, but I'm not sure about that. In terms of corners, the top guy is an absolute maniac. Elijah McCutcheon has A catching, man coverage. I think that was press as well. Yeah, A press is gnarly out of the draft. This guy could go first overall. I'm not going to count that guy out at all. But now here in week 8, because we're 0-7, this year's pretty much over, I'm going to give all of the younger players like Allen and Kilroy more snaps, so they're going to be playing over the veterans at the same positions. So we're also going to play Stevenson over Taylor Rapp here at the strong safety to end out the regular season. And in terms of contracts, Greenlaw no longer wants to re-sign. He has no interest whatsoever. So in that case, why not trade him too? We've got plenty of offers here for him. Plenty of teams are looking to add a piece to their roster prior to a playoff run. And we got some good offers here. There's a tight end there, Kevin Winters. But I think the best offer here is a very similar one to our Deebo Samuel trade for Jamal Lindsay here and a 6th-round pick. We go younger, they go older, trying to make a playoff push, and we acquire an extra draft pick in this next draft too. So in that case, we're just going to start Lindsay right out of the gate. He'll start right after the trade in place of Greenlaw's previous position. We win our first game of the season in our next game in overtime, putting up just over 500 offensive yards, 37-31. Had to work for, but we finally got a win. 3 touchdowns for Richardson and Brock Purdy's best day. 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. He also scored on the ground, so 5 total for him. McCaffrey over 4.0 on the ground. Taylor had 100 yards. And one of our first games not allowing a 100-yard receiver. And Ayuk popped off for his best game this year. 126, 2 touchdowns. Henson and Brennan both hauled in 1 too. So our best offensive day. Is this a sign of things to come? I really hope so. Because I don't want to go, 1-16 or something, because that would really be bad. But player of the week for Purdy, Nick Bosa also got it over in LA. But we drop our next 2 games in Texas against the Cowboys and the Texans. We lose here in overtime. We put up all 24 points of the 4th quarter to force it, but then could not complete the game in the final quarter of play. And Purdy threw 3 INTs. It's hard to win doing that. Both running backs had a bad day on the ground, but Fields ran it 10 times for 51 yards and an extra score, so he played pretty damn well, and we're back to allowing 100 yards by their best receivers. I had a good day, but nobody else really did a whole lot. And sack-wise, we had none. They had 3, so we're back to not getting a whole lot of pass rush from this defensive line. And still waiting for more, but we got our first fumble recovery of the year. Against the Texans, they beat us by 3 scores, 28-10. Stroud was nearly perfect, 21 for 24 in this game. 3 touchdowns, no picks. Brock Purdy threw another one. Has not had a non-INT game since week 4 this year. Brennan had the most yards, followed by Henson with 67 and a touchdown. And then defense-wise, 2 sacks for Lorenzo Shaw. Nobody else got anything, so just one guy doing the damage. Still need other guys to step up here. But now for the focus scouting here in week 11. I want to learn more about these quarterbacks, but we do know about these receivers. Levi Bush is now a round 2 to 3 projection, or a round 2 to 3 talent rather. While Denard is a round 1 and 2 talent, and Deshaun Thierry is a for sure round 1 talent. So if you go receiver, you got to go Deshaun Thierry. In terms of focus scouting, we're going to use the 3 points on The top two quarterbacks that we saw, Warren Long and Faulkner, as well as this left in Deontay Reynaud. And we'll see if that pans out, because I am really considering quarterback. We also got to think about receiver. Has Kerry Brandon played well enough to earn the number 2 spot next year, or should he go back to a number 3 spot on the roster? James Allen got upgrade points here. He's a star dev player. So I thought he would be superstar, but star dev player, we know that now. But Kilroy is superstar. So at least some good news here in this awful, awful season. But we're back to bad news. We lose our next 2 games against the Seahawks and the Vikings. We got blown out by Seattle. Cameron Butler, the rookie quarterback, replacing Nathan Kinney, puts up a monster performance. Brock Purdy once again throws a pick. McCaffrey had less than 3 on the ground. And JSN once again had 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards against us for the second time this season. We just have no answer for him. Shaw picks up a sack. Nobody else gets one either. So 2 straight weeks with him being the lone sack getter. We got a pick for Kilroy, though. And then we got absolutely mollywopped by Minnesota 28-3. I just don't have any answer as to what's going on here, because last year we saw nothing like this. The team was actually good last year. We had a huge win streak last year and barely missed the playoffs, and now we're down to this. We are in the mud right now, and we're just getting nothing on offense. The defensive line is getting nothing. We got no sacks in this game, so no help there. Fred Warner's got a pick, but nobody on the defense is helping this guy out. And so now, after this game, Brock Purdy has not thrown a non-INT game since week 4. 3 out of his first 4 weeks, no picks. Every week since then, he has thrown at least 1. At this time, I felt it was the right time to bench him, because this year is definitely over. We have no shot to do anything good here. So we're going to give Sean Lindsay the starting job, and just going to hope that he gives us something to like about the offense the rest of the way, because so far they have been entirely disappointing, and there's been no true answer for us to get ourselves back on track here. A lot of upgrade points here for a lot of young players, including Reggie Oliver here, but these haven't helped, and the draft picks, Kilroy and James Allen, haven't really helped that much either. I thought they would, but out of the bye week, we lose 2 more in a row against the Cardinals and the Saints. Lose by 10 here after scoring only 3 points at the first 3 quarters. Kyler Murray dots us up for a nice game, and Lindsay, despite a poor rating, did not throw a pick, so our first week doing that since week 4. Great job. McCaffrey is getting worse as the year goes on, it seems. And we got a sack for Chambers finally, and from James Allen, and from Shaw. Maybe our first 3-sack game all year long. It could be. But we got absolutely blown to smithereens by the Saints after scoring on the first drive of the game. We couldn't score anything afterwards. Mac Jones, 3 touchdowns, no pick. We're back to throwing 1. There's Lindsay with 1. He also ran it 8 times for 34 yards. Ayuk picks up a touchdown on 99 yards. And for sacks, a sack and a half for Chambers. He splits one of those with Shaw, who ends up playing pretty well to end the year, but a missed field goal by Phillips, and now we're into contract negotiations, and I think a game plan for this going in was essentially just withdrawing the offers for all the players who did not want to come back. I felt like if you're a bad team that is this horrible, and you have guys coming off of pretty poor years and they have no recent interest, then why would they even want to re-sign a contract with you? They would all want to hit the open market and see what they can get elsewhere. So I withdrew the offers for pretty much all the players that had no interest, and I also did it for a couple other players, like the depth pieces like Dorian Darby, Tracy Davidson, and Taylor Rapp, who was obviously just a pickup for Hufanga, who at this point I'm realizing I forgot to take off IR at this point, so I'll have to do that after this. But in terms of most of these guys are going to withdraw for the vast majority. But for Hufanga, I do want to negotiate, and he wants 4 years, but he's 30, or he's going to be 30 next year, so I'm going to offer a 3-year deal instead, but he wants a little bit more money and a bit longer length, but we'll see what we can do. Going to try and bring back Josh Phillips here because he's one of the biggest pieces to this offensive line. The right side is the good part, the left side is the bad part. But Clayton Pear here is the backup left tackle, and he's good depth to have, so I want to bring him back, but he wants more money. We are going to bring back Hufanga off IR, so he'll return, but I'm not sure he'll do a whole lot for this defense. For Chambers, he's having kind of a similar year as to last year. I was expecting a bit of a jump here in year 2, but he hasn't had it. In fact, nobody has. Nobody has played better this year than last year. And for Harrison, it's hard to tell if he's been a difference maker or not. It's hard to tell with safeties unless you're watching games, and we're not here in the simulation, so who knows about that. Gonna renegotiate with Hufanga, and he does sign this time with a 3-year deal for just over $20 million cap hit. And for Pear, he re-signs too. But we end the season losing our last 3 games for a 1-16 record. And one of these games was an 0-7, 0-7 loss against the Rams. We got goose-egged. Lindsey threw for 73 yards and had a rating below 30.0. At this point, I was set in stone on firing the OC, Ellis Page, because this is embarrassing. I mean, even with a backup who's not very good, we couldn't muster anything different than what Brock Purdy was giving us. And the defense also just wasn't doing enough to get us the win. We allowed 38 in that game. Well, 38 in a couple other games this year. We lose this one against the Cardinals to close out the season. And I was shocked by this year. I thought coming off a 9-8 year over 500, acquiring some new defensive pieces, keeping the best defenders around, and adding to the offense, I thought we'd be better. But we were the worst team in the league by a wide margin. 32nd in points per game, 32nd in points per game allowed. I'm firing both Kevin Stefanski and Ellis Page, or Gage rather. It has to be done after this horrible of a year. In fact, we should be fired, but they're going to keep us around for one more hurrah. But we were by far the worst team, 1-16. I really don't know why. Points for, the lowest by nearly 40 points. Points allowed, the lowest by, or the highest by 16. So just easily the worst. Easily by far the worst in every stat category that actually matters. Brock Purdy was horrible. Lindsey was worse somehow. And what happened to him? What happened to Tom McCaffrey? 3.6 per carry on the ground. Ayuk played well, but is not as well as years previous. And it was just a down year. Came out of nowhere. It's got to be a fluke season, right? It has to be a fluke season. That's all I can think of right now. Highest sack leader was Shaw with 6. Chambers goes from 6 last year to 4 this year. We only had 9 total turnovers forced. 8 of them were picks, and 5 were from Fred Warner. Pat Phillips missed 5 field goals. 1 of them was blocked. And that's it. We couldn't force turnovers. Couldn't get any pass rush whatsoever from anybody on the team. And really, I think the offensive line must have not played well either if McCaffrey did not play well, and same for Purdy. I mean, if we were a bad offense, it's probably the offensive line. And look at this. Chase Perkins, 15 sacks allowed. Quinn, 12 as a left guard. That's way too much. So this left side of the offensive line might need a cultural reset there. Here's the playoff picture, though. The Lions are back again here in the playoffs. They are still successful with Antonio Fuller as the quarterback. And they get to the Super Bowl where they're going to face Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Lions beat the Packers, the Seahawks, and the Falcons to get there, while the Chiefs took down the Jets, Ravens, and the Raiders. But both teams took down the 1 seeds, and they're meeting up in the Super Bowl. In the Pro Bowl, here is the list for both the NFC and AFC. Ayuk is our first guy on this list as the 6th wide receiver. Nobody on the offensive line is going to make it. No doubt about that. Defensive line, I doubt it. Yeah, nobody's there for us. Linebacker Fred Warner makes it easily. Greenlaw makes it too, but he's obviously no longer on our team. So really only 2 All-Stars or 2 Pro Bowlers for the Niners here in this season. Stat leaders: Fields had the most yards and Lawrence had the most touchdown passes. Most INTs belongs to Gabe Taylor over in Chicago. Top runner in terms of yards was Josh Jacobs with over 1,600. And it was Luke Hairston with 19 touchdowns, leading the entire league. Wow. With less than 100 yards, or 1,000 yards on the year. Amon-Ra St. Brown has another monster year. Over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. JSN hauls in 21 touchdowns. Charles Cross gives up the most sacks, but Perkins was in second behind him. And Quinn was top 6 most sacks allowed. So the offensive line was part of the issue. We're going to have to make a change there. In terms of defenders, Warner had the most sacks. Parsons has the most tackles for loss. And Garrett has the most sacks. INTs, Alexander and Warner and Justin Reed tied for first place there with 5 apiece. And in terms of recoveries, Anderson and Gardner both had 2. We had 1 as an entire team, so they were just really good players. Jimmy High was the best kicker this year. He was perfect all year long. And now for the Lions stats, just briefly, Antonio Fuller keeps things going. A massive year for him once again, as he has led the Lions back to the Super Bowl, trying to get their second ring for the city of Detroit. We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown's numbers, but Keon Caldwell has kind of dropped off the map as their number 3 receiver now, being a former first overall pick. In terms of tackles, Campbell had the most. Whitehead is still on this team, but they did not get a whole lot of sacks for them this year either, so us and them both kind of had poor pass rushing teams this season. And they also had a rough job forcing turnovers, but Carlson was near perfect all year long. Only 2 field goals missed. Now for player awards, Lamar's the MVP. Patrick Bailey, the Coach of the Year. Jonathan Taylor, Opoy over the AFC. Myles Garrett, Depoy. McDougal, the Rookie of the Year. Trevor Lawrence, best quarterback. Got Christian Kirk as the best receiver in the AFC. A lot of Jaguars there in the offense trying to sweep those awards. Sanders wins best kicker. NFC awards, JSN, Opoy. Depoy was Micah Parsons, with Fred Warner in 3rd place voting. Cam Butler wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, while Defensive Rookie goes to James Allen. Huge. This means that he'll go from star to superstar, so that is big for the future of this defense, because now he and Kilroy both have superstar dev. Harrison does too, so that is great news right there. At least this year wasn't a complete waste of our time. Warner wins best linebacker, no shocker there. Alexander wins best D-back, and Hyde was the best kicker in the NFC. But out of the awards, 2 upgrade points for James Allen up to superstar dev. This is huge for him because with the loss of Lorenzo Shaw now to free agency, he's going to be our new number 1 D tackle. We might even draft another one or sign another one in this open market. Just got to see what's out there. But we're going to go run stopper here. He's up to a scheme fit now as a 79 overall player. Can't wait for his next season. But in the Super Bowl, the Lions lose by 1. Look at that 4th quarter. The Chiefs came back in the 4th quarter, went for 2, and got the win because they converted that 2-point conversion. Despite a near perfect day for Fuller, the Lions failed to win. He was let down by his defense. Pacheco had a massive day on this Lions D. Mahomes ran the ball 12 times and scored twice. Looks like Gibbs caught 2 touchdowns here as well, but the Chiefs come out on top in the Super Bowl. The Lions fall in their second trip there, and Patrick Mahomes wins the MVP of that game as well. The Lions are still a really good team, but they're coming off L in the Super Bowl, and now in retirements, CMC's done. After this year, I can't really blame the guy. I mean, he had his worst year in like 10 seasons maybe, so that makes sense. He's gone now. We got to have a whole lot running back and replace him and get a new franchise cornerstone there, I guess. Looks like Dak was backing up Mahomes in the Super Bowl this year. That is That is interesting. But for the Buccaneers, I tried to fix this, but ended up not being able to. They gave Josh Allen the starting job all year long over Baldwin and Torres. And Baldwin, thankfully, does not lose X Factor, so thankfully that's the case. But I will do a better job this year to make sure that that does not happen again. We're going to hire Will Hudson and Bubba Davis as our new offensive and defensive coordinators because we got to hire the staff first to get this team in place to win more games. We're going to take the option for Aldridge here because he was actually pretty solid for right tackle for us. But we come in with about $40 million in cap room, the worst team in the entire league, and we have holes to fill. But because we're going into a rebuild most likely, I am trade blocking a couple of players, including Brock Purdy, Chase Perkins, Derek Quinn's going to join them too. We're going to also tack on 2 corners, Diamador Lenoir and Cam Taylor-Britt, because they're both 30 years old. We're trying to reset and get younger on this team. But look who is available in the open market. It is Antonio Fuller. Coming off a Super Bowl appearance, 4 years in Detroit. He is a free agent quarterback. And so is Josh Allen. So is Jonathan Torres. Jair Alexander's there. Greg Newsom's available. We don't have that much money in cap room, but if we can make some trades, we can free up some room and potentially go after the previous quarterback that we drafted when we were in Detroit. Do we go after Fuller and try to bring him back with head coach Ferguson? That might be the storyline of our offseason, folks. We'll figure it out next time. That's going to do it here in this year. What a horrible season. We got to bounce back next time. I'll see you guys there. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.